In this lesson, we'll add a little bit more detail to the body and then add some high frequency detail to create kind of a skin look. So let's jump back into Mudbox, and we want to add just a little bit more detail on the body. We'll probably don't want to go too crazy on this, but I want to kind of come in and block in some of the musculature of this. And so we come in maybe on the shoulders up here and just kind of start to block in some detail coming in along here. Okay, I can also start to add a little bit of the musculature coming across the chest here and into the arm. So we'll kind of smooth that back into the surface as we create it, and then come back over the top of it. Okay, and if you want to, you could use the sort of foamy, and let's get a good fall off here, and a low strength, large size, and you can use that to kind of raise up the shoulder if you wanted to, kind of raise up the chest area as well. We can also start to define the neck. So, you know, in those landmarks like the clavicle coming in here, just kind of building that up, and then maybe building the neck, and so creating this sort of muscles coming in along the neck, and then we can kind of define a little Adam's apple and just kind of the area underneath here. And then also kind of use this to block in the trap, kind of the shape along the back here. Again, just kind of smoothing this back in. And then kind of taking that space out inside here. Then we can go back to sculpt with our little crease map here. Come in and define that neck a little bit better. You can come in here and kind of define this a little bit better as well. Kind of define just under the sort of ribs, and we won't get kind of too crazy here on the anatomy. We'll just kind of create a hint of some anatomy. It's a little imp character, so nobody really knows what those look like, so we won't spend too much time on this part, but we're just going to kind of get something that looks a little bit more realistic. Okay, we can come in here and sort of define the back and kind of the shoulder blade area if we want to. All right, kind of come across here and flatten out that chest a little bit more. And let's go to actually sculpt without our stamp and just start to add the musculature over that, taking our strength down a little bit as well, and really just kind of working this back and forth. Okay, I'm going to get kind of a bicep shape in here, be a little bit of a muscular shape of musculature on the back. And then on the kind of the forearm, we'll get a smaller brush size, and we'll just start to draw up this muscle coming across here. I just want to get this bulge coming from this kind of the side of the arm down along the front. Okay, kind of do the same thing on the bottom. And again, smooth it back out and kind of work it back into the arm coming down here. All right, so something like that. It's pretty elongated, his arm is, but that's fine. We'll just add a little bit of that detail in there. If we need to kind of smooth it back out, we can. We can also come in here and define this elbow a little bit better. Coming in along the legs, probably want to add maybe a little bit more mass on the legs, and so I'll just come in here and just use sculpt, and we can add a little bit of that musculature from the top of the knee coming in We don't want them to really be too muscular, but we just want to have the indication of those muscles kind of in there. Okay. Kind of pull that up and in. Go back to sculpt with our stamp and sort of it'll help us define some of those areas a little bit more. So kind of come in here around the base of these muscles. Okay, and kind of maybe come under the knee as well. Let's add a little bit of a kind of a crease coming up and under the legs as well. All right, we can go ahead and use maybe foamy for the calves. Kind of a large brush size, and we can kind of build these out a little bit. Again, don't want them to be too big, but we do want a little bit more of a bulge there. So we can start to create that, and then maybe add a little bit of detail to define that a little bit more. We want him to be, pretty skinny, but we do want to have some kind of definition in there, maybe a little hint of kind of a human-ish kind of a anatomy, but I don't want you to get too caught up in that. Come in here and you can kind of pinch this together. Define that line a little bit more. And just create something that you like as far as the detail goes across the surface here. Okay. Now for the actual kind of skin detail, you can see as we get up close, it's really, really smooth. Well, what we can do is we can add detail in different ways. So we can use sculpt, and instead of drawing this out like a straight line using this stamp, we can use stamps kind of what we looked at earlier as far as the adding the color, but we can use something like if we grab this stamp and we turn on randomize, and you can see it creates this really bumpy surface that's really too bumpy. But if we kind of turn down the strength, we can start to get this sort of bumpy skin type of a look to it. And you can play with the scale of it. You can take the scale of your brush down, and you can make it very fine, and so we can create this sort of bumpy skin texture on this guy. So maybe in some of these areas where he's got this kind of a bumpier look, and in other areas it's more smooth. So we can start to add that high frequency detail into the mesh. Okay, so coming around here, maybe back here we can make our brush size a little bit bigger, but just kind of painting that around in these open areas to create a little bit more detail instead of just having a nice smooth surface. Now we are going to be painting it, so you could add detail through the paint, but we can also add it here in the sculpt. Okay, so coming in here, and then maybe down here, maybe this is a little bit smaller scale, so we can come in here and maybe on the hands it's a little bit more prominent, but we want to kind of leave the claws alone. We can add a little bit of detail there, maybe along the legs and feet. It's a little bit more prominent along the feet. All right, so we're just using this stamp to really quickly add detail across the surface. We could also use stencils to add detail in a different way. And so, you look at selecting some of these stencils. As we select some of these, here's one that's sort of this dotty pattern. I can hit S, and I can right click to scale up and down, left click to rotate, middle click to move around. And so I can put this in position and I can just sort of paint over it. And so I'm sculpting through this stencil. Okay, I can invert the function if I want to kind of cut that into the surface a little bit more. And so the stencil's not moving, I'm just painting through it. So if I were to get to the edge of it, it wouldn't paint anything unless I would tile it. So I can turn the stencil off just like that, and then come back in here and kind of smooth out what I've painted. So stencils and stamps are going to be really important, but they're going to be used in kind of different ways. Stamps are going to be applied at the end of your brush, whereas stencils you can think of as sort of you're painting through the stencil, and you can use those with your painting or with your sculpting. Let me just increase the brush strength here a little bit. Turn off invert. Kind of come in here. And you can see randomize is on. I want to turn that off so we get kind of a nice straight wrinkle. And kind of come down in here and add a little bit more detail. Okay, so that's a quick look at kind of adding some high frequency detail to this guy. Let's go ahead in the next lesson and take a look at adding new geometry to the scene. So maybe adding some of the set and the prop that he's going to be holding. So we'll go ahead and do that next.